Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Darkness. Gather round and try to stay in the light. Some of the others from the dark aren't quite as civil as I am, and I hate cleaning up that mess. Nick from Anonymous. This is fairly long because it took place over about a year. I'm also a flowery writer, unfortunately. Please bear with me. I'm a nanny and had been with my current family for about 2 years when the oldest started preschool a couple of days a week. I'd drop him off around 9 and pick him up at 12:30, bringing his baby brother along. Now, this school was very hoity-toity, and most of the families who sent their children were very wealthy. Everyone entering the building had to wear badges with our names printed out. Every entrance had a security guard and a metal detector. They employed about 10 security guards around the building that patrolled the place from open till close. I became very familiar with several of them because I'd passed them at their posts on the way in and out. Most were cops making a few extra $100 on their days off. Well, during the fall of 2017, the older boy moved to a new class on the other side of the school. This entrance was never as populated, so it was just a couple of people going in and out of this door during the day. The security guard was from a private company. He was always extremely polite and friendly. One of the nicer security guards, without a doubt. He was probably in his late 20s, though he looked like a young Santa Claus. Round, jolly face with a permanently red nose and cheeks framed by a thick brown beard. Thin framed glasses and curly brown hair that went to about his shoulders. I eventually learned that his name was Nick, which only solidified my comparison. Months passed and we'd see each other 2 or 3 days a week. The boys loved to wave to him and he'd always ask how our day was and we'd respond. In January of 2018, I came down with the flu and missed about 2 weeks of work. When I returned, I continued our regular schedule of school drop-offs and pickups. I was walking past Nick, who waved, and he stopped me and said he noticed I was gone for 2 weeks and he hoped I was feeling better. I smiled, thanked him, and said it was the sickest I had been, but I was glad to be back. I found it a bit odd that he noticed and he knew I was sick. I assumed my employers had told him when they did the drop-offs and pickups while I was gone. I didn't think much of it and continued on, but when I went to leave, he stopped me again and told me he didn't know that I wasn't the boy's mother. I laughed and basically said people confuse me for their mom because I'm with them all the time and we look kind of similar. He laughed too and then said, "I was wondering, I never saw you with a husband and you don't have a ring on your finger, so I thought you were just a single mom." I laughed nervously to this and didn't know what to say, so I said, "Nope, just the nanny." I wanted to kick myself once I got back to the car. I was caught off guard and I'm generally a bit awkward, so tend not to respond the best when put on the spot. I guess I didn't realize he paid that much attention to me. I was a bit uneasy, but found it harmless. The next drop-off day, I said hello, and he responded by calling me by name, which he had never done before, and telling me I looked nice, which he had definitely never done before, and I was very surprised. I started to think he may be interested in me, since learning that I'm not actually a single mom. This was weird for me. I'm gay, and I look very gay, so men very seldom take any interest in me, and when they do, I'm weirded out. When I left, we exchanged a simple goodbye, and the rest of the week was pretty non-eventful. In early February, I was doing the drop-off yet again, when on the way out, with the baby strapped to my chest, Nick stopped me. He was very courteous, but he asked me if I'd be interested in going to dinner with him some weekend. Again, I'm incredibly awkward, so my response was to laugh. I could see he was immediately offended. I apologized and tried to explain that I was actually engaged and had been in a long-term relationship. This was true. His face changed and he said, "Well, where's your ring?" The way he said this made me very uncomfortable. I felt accused and defensive. I told him I don't really like wearing jewelry to work, so only wear it on the weekends. I had accidentally scratched the baby with the ring when he was just a newborn, and basically decided it wasn't something I'd wear when caring for them. He didn't seem satisfied with my answer, but let me go and told me to have a good evening. When I came to pick the older boy up that afternoon, Nick seemed agitated. I said hello and got no answer. Okay. I was upset but let it go. I didn't want to hurt this guy's feelings, but geez, could he not tell I was gay? The constant button-ups didn't clue him in. Did I need an undercut? It wasn't personal. Why was he so angry? When I left, he again ignored me. I just kind of swallowed and thought, oh well, he'll get over it. I had put the baby in his seat in the back of my car and was buckling up the 3-year-old when a voice behind me boomed, "You don't have to lie to me." I whipped around and Nick was about a foot away from me. I was stuck between the car, the open door, and his body. He no longer looked like this jolly, polite young man. He was big, probably about 6'2" and easily 400 pounds. I was scared and I was angry. How dare he come up to me and scare me? How dare he corner me and intimidate me when he knows I'm doing my job? I hurried out of the doorway and shut the door and locked it with the keys in my hands. I stood inches away and tried to back up. You didn't need to lie to me. If you aren't interested in me, just tell me. I don't like liars. I didn't owe this guy anything, but I explained that I wasn't lying. I said I'm engaged and it's nothing personal. He was a nice, friendly guy and that I didn't mean to hurt his feelings. He was angry. He huffed and said, "Oh, you didn't mean to hurt my feelings? I just don't appreciate dishonesty. You lied about being their mother, so I figured you were lying about this too." I was mad. I never once lied about being their mother. He had made the assumption because I was the one doing the drop-offs and pickups. Our conversations never got beyond hello, good day, and goodbye until recently. I decided this conversation was over. He was talking down to me and accusing me of nonsense. I told him I never lied about this or anything and didn't appreciate his tone. I went around and got in the car and he followed but kept his distance and said, "I'm not even sure why I wasted my time on you anyways." I was shocked. He was a completely different person. I avoid altercations at all costs, so for someone to speak to me like this was very upsetting. I ended up disclosing the situation to my employers, who got very upset. They did not like how he spoke to me, and especially didn't like this was done around their children. They ended up contacting the school, which I was mortified about. I was terrified to see him again, knowing he'd know that I'd told. That never happened. He was fired and replaced with a retired cop who was incredibly unfriendly, and I was grateful. I felt bad. I thought my employers had overreacted, but they were prone to overreactions, and honestly, I was selfishly happy I wouldn't have to see him again. I was worried about how awkward it may be. I let it go, and weeks passed and school drop-offs were uneventful. However, in May of 2018, that changed. I live in an enclosed apartment complex in uptown Dallas. Our apartment neighbors are a ton of bars, so we have had some issues with break-ins and vandalism. We've always had a police presence, but after an incident where some drunk guy broke into the office through a window, the office manager decided to hire security guards. Guess who ended up doing the night shifts? Nick. When I first saw him, I was checking my mail and he passed me in his uniform. I froze and he looked me in the eye and said, "Good evening, ma'am." Good, he must have forgotten me. I was shaking as I went up to my apartment, and I immediately told my fiancée who I saw. She was aware of the situation with Nick at the old preschool, and being the daughter of a cop, she was always more suspicious and suspected the absolute worst out of everyone. She did not want him to find out which apartment was ours, so he started taking the back elevator and parking in a different area. He only patrolled the office area and the perimeter of the building, so we found it easy to avoid him for a week or so. One day, the back elevator was out of order, so I had to take the front elevator from the parking garage up to my apartment on the 4th floor. The elevator stopped in the lobby, and Nick walks on, and I freeze. I guess he could sense I was anxious. He looked at me and said, "Don't worry, my name. I'm not mad you got me fired, just don't do it again." I didn't even respond. I got off on the 4th floor and then thought, crap, now he knows which floor I live on. I immediately ran inside and told my fiancée, and she said we should contact the management. I convinced her this was a bad idea. It could make him angry, and I doubt he'd be let go. He hasn't done anything. But did he follow me here? He knew me. How did he end up here? It seemed like too much of a coincidence. I will say we lived in panic. We kept our door bolted and installed a camera. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of the story of Jennifer Moray. She was a young lawyer living alone in an apartment similar to mine in Houston. She was stalked and attacked by her apartment security guard. He had access to her apartment. She survived but went through a horrible ordeal, and we were both terrified this could happen to us. Every noise terrified us. We'd get up to make sure the door was bolted several times before we could go to bed. That summer, we were convinced he'd try to do something. Maybe just our overactive, worried minds? We ended up avoiding him for the most part. We saw him occasionally, but he didn't seem interested, and though we were always wary, we figured he got over it and let our guards down. And he never did bother me again. He never said much of anything to me when I did see him. I decided that maybe he was having a really hard time last fall, and he was a really nice guy who maybe didn't have the best social skills. Fall of 2018 rolls around, and I'm busy with work, and my fiancé is out of town often on business meetings. One weekend, I'm home alone and it's 3:30 p.m., and I'm walking down to the office to get a package. There are about 3 squad cars and police all over the lobby and going up the stairs. I'm wondering what happened, but like I said, we live next to bars and we've had incidents with drunk assholes, so I figured someone had had an altercation or something got stolen. I try to eavesdrop but don't hear much. I go about my day and then receive an email from my apartment complex saying they have a community-wide meeting scheduled to discuss the incident and go over resident safety concerns. I'm wondering what the hell happened, so of course I go to the meeting. And guess what? A young, single girl living in an apartment by herself showed up mid-afternoon to find Nick inside her apartment. She came in and her drawers were in disarray. He was hiding in her closet and came up with some excuse. The security guards do not have keys to any apartment and aren't supposed to be in the resident halls. Later we found out he had been stalking this girl and stole keys from maintenance and made copies. This has been going on for at least a month, if not longer. They found several of her belongings in his vehicle, and he was obviously fired and charged. I didn't follow exactly what happened to him, but we assume he did some time. It was absolutely terrifying, and of course our apartment complex got the pantsuit off of them. I was glad his attention shifted, but wonder what could have happened to this girl. But this wasn't the last time I saw or heard of him. A few weeks ago, over a year since I last saw him, I went into this big fancy mall in my city, and guess who was working security? Nick. My first thought was, you've got to be kidding me. My second thought was, how on earth does this guy keep getting security jobs? Who is dropping the ball here? I saw him and turned around and walked right out the door. Thankfully, I'm moving out of state next month. So Nick, the creepy stalker security guard, let's not meet again. Pretty sure a spider saved my life. From Jen. So this just happened tonight, and I'm still freaking out. Okay, the background info first. I work second shift at my company, normally from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. On the street I work, there are 2 ways for me to get home. To the left takes me over some train tracks. There is a 24-hour burger place and a Mexican fast food place that is open till 3 a.m. The police station is maybe 10-minute drive from the tracks. To the right takes me straight to the highway, which gets me home. If I go to the left, I have to take side streets to get to the highway, as it doesn't connect for a few blocks, or go back over the tracks and past my workplace to get to the highway. On to the story. Tonight, I got out a bit early, about 12:30. Lucky me. I was hungry, so instead of going straight home, I decided to go for burgers. Usually I have my window rolled down, listening to music. As I close my car door, I realize a rather large spider has spun its web between my window and side mirror. Spiders freak me out. If it had been inside, I would have beat Usain Bolt getting out of that car. Since it was outside, I contented myself to leave my window rolled up and just blast my music. As I'm pulling out, I see the train barriers come down. I'm not foolish enough to try and beat it, so I pull up and wait at the barrier. As I'm waiting, I see movement out of the corner of my eye. That's when I see him. A haggard man, maybe somewhere in his 30s, with dirty hair and clothes, standing next to my car. We do have a few homeless people around, but they don't usually bother you if you ignore them and don't talk to them. I figure he'll go away. Nope. He walks to the driver's side and tries to open my car door. My car has automatic locks that activate pretty much as soon as you turn the car on, thank goodness. He then starts banging on my car door window. He keeps screaming at me to let him in. I reach for my phone, but of course I'm panicking and can't get it out of my purse, and then immediately dropped it down the side of the seat. I'm scared he's going to break the glass or something at this point. I have a foldable nightstick in my car, but in my panic I forgot it was there. I finally get a hold of my phone and dial 911. I'm screaming at him to back off and that I've called police. He goes around trying to get into the car via the other doors, screaming at me the whole time, calling me about every name in the book, saying, "Get out of the car." I'm giving the dispatcher my location, and it feels like forever for the cops to show up, but it was likely only a few minutes. The guy in the meantime is crawling on top of my car and beating it with his fists. Of course, now the train has left and the barrier is up, but I don't want to risk killing this guy by flooring it over the tracks. Pretty sure it's at least a manslaughter charge if he dies. Not sure about that, but not willing to risk any jail time over this crazy person. Thankfully, I see the cop lights coming. He runs off and one of the responding officers gives chase. The other cop tells me to pull in at the burger place and calms me down. He takes all the information I can remember in my panicked state. He then says offhandedly something to the effect of, "Good thing your windows weren't down." That's when it hit me that the only reason they weren't down was because of that spider on my car. They didn't find the guy, as there's a crap ton of places to hide and it's pretty rough terrain at night, but they did say they would step up patrols around the area. The cops assured me that I did everything right that I could have done. I didn't get out of the car and I called for help. I decided to skip eating out as I wasn't in the mood anymore, and just went home to have a freak out and methodically quadruple check all my doors and windows. Cops said they would call if they found anything, so we'll see. I don't know what his deal was, but creepy guy who tried to get in my car. Let's not meet. And the spider that may have inadvertently saved my life. I'll let you slide this time. The man who wanted me to pull over. From Slytherin Ari. This happened last year, and it still gives me the creeps thinking about it. I was leaving work and was on my way to a friend's house. My work is on the literal edge of town. It's pretty rural, and gets really dead at night. My friends live even further from my work, in where I guess you'd consider to be the country area, and the road gets more and more desolate the closer you get to their house. I clocked out of work, went to my car, and called my friend to talk to her on the phone about something while I drove to her and her boyfriend's house. I looked both ways before I exited the parking lot, but there was absolutely nobody else on the road that I could see, which was a pretty good distance. I made it a mile or so down the road when I see headlights behind me and coming up fast. It was a full-sized pickup truck that had been lifted, and he got so close to my car that all I could see out of my back window was the Chevy badge on his grille. I thought he wanted to pass me, so I waved out the window for him to pass using the suicide lane since the road was only 2 lanes there. Instead, he started laying on his horn. Mind you, I'm not a slowpoke driver. I was already doing 55 in a 45 zone, so it's not like I was inconveniencing him with my speed. I tell my friend what's happening, and she tells me to just keep going and that he'll probably leave me alone eventually. He stays glued behind me for another mile or so, occasionally honking some more. Eventually he started turning his brights on for a few seconds, and he started to slow down until we were a couple hundred feet apart, and then he'd floor it to fly up behind me really fast like he was feigning rear-ending me. I'm getting more sketched out at this point, and my friend is trying to calm me down and telling me to just keep driving. At this point, I'm really scared that he's going to hit me, and I wanted to get away, but there were no businesses open this late this far out of the city. In fact, there weren't really any places to be open anymore. Just fields and some houses every now and then. I decided to floor it and try to outrun him, figuring my Corolla might not be a Formula 1 car, but surely it's a hell of a lot quicker than an old pickup truck and I could get some distance. I got up to 85 and kept an eye on him, and he didn't seem to be trying to catch up. I felt a little safer and assumed he'd given up, so I dropped back down to around 60 and informed my friend that it had worked and he was done. I still had tunnel vision from the adrenaline and didn't realize he was flying up behind me again until he was barreling towards me, doing probably 85 or 90. I realized he wasn't slowing down, so I braced myself for the impact and told my friends he was about to rear-end me. Instead, he cut around me, missing my car by inches, and flew around in front of me. He cut right in front of my car and slammed on his brakes, trying to get me to rear-end him instead. I was able to stop in time, and he started slowly continuing forward. He repeatedly stopped in the road for a few miles, almost like he was baiting me to pass him. My friend told me that her boyfriend was on the phone with the police and was keeping them updated, and for me to stay on the phone with her as long as I could. After a while, I could see my friend's street sign, and she kept assuring me that her and her boyfriend were outside waiting for me to pull in and that the cops were on the way. She told me to pull into the driveway and stay in the car until they were sure he was gone. He made what should have been a 10-second drive to the street a painstaking process because he kept stopping in front of me. The next part was my fault. I instinctively turned on my blinker, which let him know I was about to turn onto the road. So he immediately whipped up the curb to cut in front of me again. My friend's house is on the corner, so her and her boyfriend were able to see everything now, but I had a bit of a ways to go before I got to the driveway. The truck stayed put in the middle of the road this time, and he wasn't moving, so I tried to go around him. As soon as I started to pass him, he floored it and cut to the left, nearly hitting my front end and blocking the road completely. I was feeling braver now that I knew help was on the way, and my friends were there. So I laid on my horn, yelled some choice words and told him to move his ass. My friend and her boyfriend had gotten to the edge of the property where we were by then, and I guess the driver took notice of them and slowly started moving out of my way. I pulled into the driveway as fast as I could and looked out of the rearview mirror to see him slowly driving up to her driveway where he stopped. I couldn't see his facial features because it was so dark, and he was kind of far away, but I could tell he was staring at me the whole time. My friends had gotten to my car just as he got to the driveway, and I watched my friend approach the truck. I heard her say, "You need to leave now. The cops are on their way," and they stared at each other for a few seconds before he slowly continued on. Her neighborhood is a giant loop, and he never exited. So we felt adventurous and snuck around the block in search of where he went while we waited on the cops. We found the truck parked at a house and returned just as the police arrived. We told the cops where the truck was, and the officer returned informing us that there was no answer at the door, and he left. Neither her boyfriend, who had lived there forever, nor his mother recognized the truck or the man, and if I recall, his mother even knew the people who lived at the house the truck parked at, and as far as I'm aware, he wasn't seen again. Because I'm a very small female who was alone at almost midnight, we all assume he watched me leave work and was trying to bully me into wrecking my car so I would pull over and he could abduct me. We think once he realized the cops were involved, he parked the truck in someone's otherwise empty driveway and likely left it there to hide in a nearby field until the cops left the area. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe if you want to hear more. If you'd like to have your story narrated, you can send it to storiesofdarkness55@gmail.com. And don't forget that you can listen to these episodes on Spotify. And as always, pleasant dreams.